All right, so last time we created a blueprint down here, and then inside of here we took a look at our components and our blueprints, essentially graph area. And so we have viewport here, construction, and we have our event graph. And this is going to be sort of the focus of the next few lessons here. And let's take a look at how these nodes essentially work. Now this one we're not going to look at today. It has to do with collision, but we will look at this one, which is event begin play. Now this one, if we hover over, it says event will play, event when plays begins for this actor. So what does that mean? Well, let's create a new node. So I'm going to drag off by holding the left mouse button, my execution pin here, and I'm going to type the word print. And here's print string. Now I'm going to be super generic, and you can see by default, it automatically gives you hello. And we could type in here hello and then world. And then development only, I'm going to click on this little option here, and it says duration is 2 seconds. I'm going to make the duration something like 20 seconds, and I'm going to make the text color here maybe I don't know, red or something. Dark red, or let's see if we can get that a little bit closer to red. Okay, there we go. And I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to compile and save that. Now when I go back in my scene, because my blueprint fun is in my scene and I press play, you'll see up in the corner we get hello world, right? And so what this does is whatever we wire into this right away, and whatever we wire right into here will begin, or at the very second that this, we press play and we begin play, it'll print that string. Now, something important to point out is the order in which these scripts execute. So before the event graph happens, there's this area called the construction script. And the construction script fires off or starts before any sort of event or event graph. So let's return our event graph and talk a little bit about this. So once you have a print string here, if you want to break the connection, you can hold the Alt key and then left click on it. And then you, again, left click and drag to connect those again. So let's talk a little bit also about execution order. So these little execution pins, they run in order. So it'll begin play, it'll print a string here. And then what I could do is add another node, and you can see that they're broken up in these categories. But sometimes if you know what node to use, it's better off just typing it up here. And I'll add a delay node. And what this does is this will delay whatever the next order or the next node in the operation could be. So let's say I'm going to copy and paste this Control C, Control V, or Command C, Command V on the Mac. And I'm just going to say hello world, and then I'll just type again. And what this will do is for 1.2 seconds, let's do 1 whole second, it's going to pause, and then it's going to print again. So let's compile and save that, and let's press play. You can see we have hello world, and then again printed above it. So that's the execution order of these nodes, or script execution order, depending on how you want to look at it. All right, so let's take a look at another node, this event tick here. So I'm just going to rewire this into print string, and then I'm going to hold Alt, and I'm going to break this connection. Now this is a pretty important node because it's used oftentimes to check things like health on a player, or just anything that's repetitive. And what event tick does is it says it's called every frame. So at the start of every frame, event tick is called. Now, a lot of people don't know, if they haven't come from the animation world or anything, that you'll have sometimes depending on your graphics card, between 30 to 60 or more frames that'll play every second. So it should print essentially this section here, or it should run this series, this string of commands here, 60 times for 1 second, or 30 depending on the video card. So I'm going to go ahead and compile and save that. And we go ahead and press play in my scene. Now you can see it's constantly running, right? It's constantly printing that out. We've got that little delay there that's kind of popping up too. And so if we go back inside of here, and let's say, I'm an engineer and I'm going to pass this project on to somebody else, or I'm a tech artist or whatever. What is one way that I can help people understand what this block of code does? I mean, it looks pretty simple, right? Print string, delay, print string. But let's say somebody doesn't know. Well, I can go in here and I can highlight this, and I can press the C, like Charlie key, and I can add a comment. And so I could say, this block of code prints, text, Another way of doing it is you can highlight a block of code and then right click and then do, create comment from selection. So that's another way of doing it. And then if you select that comment block, you can kind of move these around like this. All right, some other nifty stuff is there's a comment color here. So say, you're like, okay, this should be, whatever. it should be a little bit on the pink side. For all my anything that has to do with text, I do it as pink. And you know what? To be honest with you, for whatever reason, I don't want the to be able to move the block when I do that. I just want it to be a comment. You can change it to comment, and now when you move this around, you can see that it doesn't um, it doesn't move it as a group, right? And something else to note is you could have comments within comments. Like say I'm like, well, I want somebody to really know that this print string is used to print again. So I can select that, hit C again, and I could say print again. Depending on how much logic. And again, that'll move too. And you could also like say you drag this out and you want to add another delay. And as I'm moving this around, I'm like, wait, I want to put that inside this comment block. Well, you probably guessed it, but just for the sake of clarity, you could grab your delay and just drop it in there. And as you move this out a little bit, now I move this around and it's part of that comment block. Now, aside from comments, another way that we can kind of organize our code is, let's say that let me undo that. We have a print string that's, for whatever reason, it's down here. Oops, I want this guy. And we have it wired from this print string to here. And this is placed over here, but it's kind of hard to see, right? Like the line is being obstructed here. So what we can do is we can link these by double clicking the execution here and create an execution pin. And I can move this down, and this helps to really organize our code with execution pins. So now it'll run this way. And if you're like, well, it's being obscured, you can't do a print string to a string, but we could do a second. Let's do the delay here. Let's wire that in. So you could rewire this, and I guess we'd have to add another delay over here, like a delay to the print string. But anyway, the idea here is, we could wire this going this way, and we could say, oh, like let's move this down here. Here, let me zoom in a little bit better. Move this down. So these little execution pins are like a really helpful way of, kind of showing the path of our pins, something like this maybe. So now we know this wires this way. If for whatever reason it has to be like this. Also, let's zoom in a little bit better here. If I click on this, you can see this little 3 dots. It says toggle comment bubble. So if I click on a comment bubble here, I can type to print string or whatever you want to write, right? To print string. And now I can say, oh, okay, what is this? If I click in here or I click that little comment, I can hide it or I can bring it back. And I could say, oh, that's to go to print string. So that's kind of cool. So you could comment within comments even on these little execution pins, which is a really nice feature. I think this is a good place to stop. We got pretty good into comments, execution pins and all this other good stuff. And yeah,